In For Your Own Good, the author Alice Miller makes the case that all forms of violence in the world, all types of atrocities, all come back in some way or another to mistreatment in childhood. And also that those things are more common in kind of like normal parenting than what much of us would realize. This part that I'm on specifically discusses a serial unaliver from the 1960s in Jurgen, and that first part goes over like kind of the details of his crimes, and it's pretty gruesome. In this part, it is going to share details that an author who did a book on him learned when just trying to get to know him on a personal level. Through a lengthy correspondence, Paul Moore made an effort to understand Jurgen Bartsch as a human being. He also spoke with many people who knew something about Bartsch and were willing to talk about him. Moore's inquiries about the boy's first year of life brought the following to light. Jurgen Bartsch found himself in pathogenic surroundings the very day he was born, November 6, 1946. Immediately after the delivery, he was taken away from his tubercular mother, who passed away a few weeks later. There was no ersatz mother, which basically means surrogate mother or like foster mother, for the baby. In Essen, I found a nurse named Annie, still working in the same maternity ward, who remembers Jurgen very clearly. It was so unusual to keep children in the hospital longer than 2 months, but Jurgen stayed with us for 11 months. Modern psychology knows that the first year in the life of a human being is the most important one. Maternal warmth and body contact are of irreplaceable value for the child's later development. While the baby was still in the hospital nursery, the economic and social attitudes of his future adoptive parents were already beginning to influence his life. Nurse Annie said, Frau Bartsch, which is his adoptive mother, paid extra so he could stay here with us. She and her husband wanted to adopt him, but the authorities were hesitant because they had reservations on account of the baby's background. His biological mother was illegitimate like him. She had also been raised by the state for a time. No one was sure who the father was. Normally, we sent children without parents to another ward after a certain amount of time, but Frau Bartsch didn't want that to happen. In the other ward, there were all sorts of children, including some from lower-class parents. I still remember today how the baby's eyes shone. He smiled at a very early age, followed object with his eyes, raised his head, all at a very, very early age. At one point, he discovered that the nurse would come when he pushed a button, and that amused him greatly. He didn't have any problems eating then. He was a thoroughly normal, well-developed baby who related well to those around him. On the other hand, there were some early pathological developments. The nurses on the ward had to devise special methods for caring for him since it was an exception to have such a big baby there. To my astonishment, I learned that the nurses had toilet trained him before he was 11 months old. Annie obviously found my astonishment strange. Please don't forget the way things were then. Just 1 year after a lost war, we didn't even have shifts. With some impatience, she answered my questions about how she and the other nurses had managed that. We simply put him on the potty beginning at 6 or 7 months. We had children here in the hospital who were already walking at 11 months, and they were nearly toilet trained too. Under the circumstances, a German nurse of her generation, even a kind one as she, could hardly be expected to use more enlightened methods of child training. After 11 long months of this pathogenic existence, the child, now called Jurgen, was taken by his adoptive parents. Everyone who knows Frau Bartsch more than slightly says that she is a demon for cleanliness. Shortly after being released from the hospital, the baby regressed in the matter of his abnormally early toilet training. This disgusted Frau. Acquaintances of the Bartsch family noticed around that time that the baby was always black and blue. Frau had a different explanation for the bruises each time, but it was never very convincing. At least once during this period, the downcast father, Gerhard, confessed to a friend that he was considering divorce. She beats the baby so badly I simply can't stand it anymore. Another time when he was taking his leave, Herr Bartsch excused himself for being in such a hurry. I have to get home or she will beat the child to pass away. Jurgen, of course, is unable to report about this period, but we can assume that the frequent anxiety attacks he tells of are the result of these beatings. When I was very little, I was always terribly afraid of my father's lumbering way, and I have hardly ever seen him laugh, which I noticed even way back then. So this is an anecdote from Jurgen. Why this fear I wrote about? It was not so much of confession as it was of the other children. You don't know that I was the scapegoat in the early grades or all the things they did to me. Defend myself? Just try it if you were the smallest one in the class. I was too afraid even to sing in school or to do gymnastics. A few reasons why. Classmates who aren't seen outside of school aren't accepted, in line with the idea that he just doesn't want to bother with us. Children don't make a distinction between whether he doesn't want to or he can't. I couldn't. A couple of afternoons with my teacher, Herr Hunmeyer, and a couple of days in Werden at my grandma's, where I slept on the floor, the rest of the afternoons in Krattenberg in the shop. The end result at home, everywhere, and nowhere. No pals, no friends, because I didn't know anyone. Those are the main reasons, but there's something else that's very important. Until I started going to school, I was locked up most of the time in the old underground prison. He was referencing his grandmother's cellar, with barred windows and artificial light. Walls 10 feet high, all that. I was allowed out only if Grandma had me by the hand, wasn't allowed to play with another child for 6 years. I might get dirty, and anyway, so-and-so is no one for you. I'm only in the way there, and pushed from one corner to another. I get a beating when I don't deserve it, and get away with it when I do deserve one. My parents don't have any time. I'm afraid of my father because he starts yelling right away, and my mother was hysterical even then. But more than anything else, no contact with others of the same age because, as I said, it's forbidden. So how do you fit in? Get rid of my shyness, which sometimes happens when I'm playing? After 6 years, it's too late. This is back to the author. Being locked up is an important factor. Later, Jurgen will lure little boys into an underground shelter and unalive them there. Because he had no one as a child who understood his unhappiness, he was unable to experience it and had to repress his pain, not letting anybody see his misery. Back to Jurgen. I wasn't a coward about everything, but I would have been one if I had let anyone notice how I suffered. Maybe that was wrong, but that's what I thought anyway. Because every boy has his pride. You surely know that. No, I didn't cry every time I got a licking. I thought that was being a sissy, and so at least I was brave about one thing, not letting anyone see my misery. But in all seriousness now, who should I have gone to? Who could I have poured my heart out to? My parents? As fond of them as I am sorry to say that they never, but really never, could have come up with even a tiny fraction of an ounce of understanding in this regard. Never could, I say, not never did. Please notice my good intentions. And this is not a reproach, it's a simple fact. I am firmly convinced, yes, I even experienced it at first hand. My parents never knew how to deal with children. Back to the author. Not until he is in prison does Jurgen reproach his parents for the first time. He says, "You never should have kept me apart from other children. Then I wouldn't have been so chicken in school. You never should have sent me away to those sadists in their black cassocks. And after I ran away because the priest mistreated me, you shouldn't have brought me back to that school. But you didn't know that. Mama shouldn't have thrown into the stove the book about reproduction that I was supposed to get from Aunt Martha when I was 11 or 12. Why didn't you play with me one single time in 20 years? But maybe other parents would have been the same way. At least I was a wanted child, even though I didn't know it for 20 years, only today when it's too damn late. Whenever my mother flung the curtain in the doorway to one side and came charging out of the shop like an Amazon and I was in the way, then slap, 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 I got it in the face, simply because I was in the way, often enough. That was the only reason. A few minutes later, I was suddenly the dear boy that you put your arm around and kissed. Then she was surprised that I resisted and was afraid of her. I was already afraid of that woman when I was very little, just the same as I was of my father, except that I saw him less. Today I ask myself how he ever stood it. Sometimes he was at work from 4 in the morning till 10 or 11 at night without a break, usually in the kitchen where he made his sausages. For days at a time I didn't see him at all, and if I did hear or see him, it was only when he went rushing around shouting. But when I was a baby and made a mess in my diapers, he was the one who tended to me. He would say to himself, I was the one who always had to wash and change the diapers. My wife never did it. She couldn't bring herself to do it. I don't mean to run my mother down. I'm fond of my mother. I love my mother. But I don't believe she is a person who is capable of the slightest understanding. My mother must love me very much. I find it really astonishing. Otherwise, she wouldn't be doing everything for me that she is. I used to get it in the neck a lot. She's broken coat hangers on me, like when I didn't get my homework right or didn't do it fast enough. It got to be a routine with my bath. My mother always bathed me. She never stopped doing it, and I never griped about it, although sometimes I would have liked to say, "Now, for heaven's sake," but I don't know. It's also possible that I accepted it as a matter of course till the very end. In any case, my father wasn't allowed to come in. If he would have, he would have yelled. Until I was arrested when I was 19, it went like this. I washed my hands and feet myself. My mother washed my head, neck, and back. That might have been normal, but she also went over my stomach, all the way down, and my thighs too, practically everything from top to bottom. You can certainly say that she did much more than I did. Usually I didn't do anything at all, even though she said, "Wash your hands and feet." But usually I was pretty lazy. Neither my mother nor my father ever told me I should keep my private part clean under the certain portion of skin. My mother didn't do that when she washed me either. Did I find the whole thing peculiar? It was the kind of feeling that wells up periodically for seconds or minutes and perhaps is close to breaking through, but it doesn't quite come to the surface. I felt it, but never directly. I only felt it indirectly, if it's even possible to feel something indirectly. I'm out of time, so I'll continue in a part 3.